When We Were Young, 2024, all album plays. We're going to be at a full festival listening to records. All 57 of them here at the Emo Social Club, we're reviewing. In this episode, we are reviewing Sleeping With Sirens. Let's cheers to this. Before we get into our opinions on this record, Lizzie, tell us a little bit about Sleeping With Sirens and this record.
Okay, so some quick background about this album. It dropped on May 10th, 2011 via Rise Records, and it was Sleeping With Sirens' second release. So this is very risecore coded.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, it is.
It was produced by Chris Crummett, who also worked on Dance Gavin Dance's Downtown Battle Mountain 2, which came out the same year. That is not the one that is being played at the festival. I had to triple check that.
Yep.
And Sleeping With Sirens also had a hand heavy in the production too, from my research, what I found. So this charted number 13 in the UK Independent Album Breakers, number 78 on the Billboard 200 here in the US, and number 13 on the US Independent charts.
Yep.
Made number 5 for Billboard's hard rock albums as well, which I would argue Sleeping With Sirens does not fall under hard rock, but for the time, it most likely did. The 4 singles that came off of this album were Do It Now, Remember It Later, Fire, If You Can't Hang, A Trophy Father's Trophy Son. For this as well, they ended up going on tour later that year with Pierce the Veil for their Collide with the Sky tour.
I've seen them tour so many times together. So when they did like King for a Day, this might come up in the Pierce the Veil episode too, but when they did King for a Day, I was like, awesome. But I saw that when it came out.
Wow.
when they went on tour together.
Look at you flexing.
I don't think so. There were a lot of high schoolers there and I was a full-on adult. All right. Well, we're going to tell you what we think about this record. But before we do, we are going through all 57 records. We already said it. So if you want to know when we talk about your favorite record, make sure to subscribe. There's a button right there. It probably... Did you know this? It glows when we say subscribe. Ooh. So make sure to go down there and hit that glowy button. Like it if you like it, if you agree with our opinions or our thoughts. And we have a playlist with all the records. So make sure to let us know what you think about what we think so that we can think it back at you. Let me tell you my thoughts on Let's Cheers to This by Sleeping With Sirens. I was saying that Pierce the Veil was a band that I saw a few times, Sleeping With Sirens on the tour with them. And I was a fan of Pierce the Veil. Like I was a big fan of Pierce the Veil from their second record and then on to Collide with the Sky, which featured Kellin Quinn on King for a Day. And so it was just kind of a natural progression of like, okay, I think I got to check out this Sleeping With Sirens band because they're going to be on this tour. They're going to be on with Pierce the Veil a lot, which we have seen is true. So I went into this record and like checked it out, just knowing it's going to be with them. I liked this record at the time, still like it a lot now.
Okay.
I still am still an absolute fan of this record. It is just super catchy, poppy rock hits, not at all like Pierce the Veil. Pierce the Veil being more of a post-hardcore screamo band, and this is not so much that. Although it has its parts, it's not so much that. It is just a more poppy, pop-punky, emo type record. And this was kind of after a lot of that scene had already kind of come and gone, and it was kind of becoming less cool to do that. And so I think that Sleeping With Sirens just had a very good sound at that time that wasn't what a lot of other bands were doing, and I think it just got me then, and I was very happy that it still gets me now. Kellin writes some very catchy lines. I know his voice is very high pitched, same with Pierce the Veil, but that's why I think it didn't bother me because I was already cool with Pierce the Veil. This is going to be me just saying Pierce the Veil got me very ready to listen to this record. It very much prepared me.
They were a primer for you is what I'm hearing.
You have to lay down like a coat of Pierce the Veil to get like a really good seal on the Kellin Quinn. I think the Kellin's melody lines are super catchy and fun to sing as a vocalist myself. I like to sing really catchy lines. There's a lot of whoa-ohs in this that I think are always fun in any music and normally I wouldn't necessarily like, I think, records like this if it weren't for his vocals. I think he brings a lot to it. And I will say this I'm going to be critical a little bit about it. At the time when they were going into their record after this, there was an interview with Kellin where he said there are going to actually be less breakdowns in the future because we found that breakdowns are super easy to write. And it was just kind of like a thing at the time, like, gotta have a breakdown in this. And so I do think that on this record, a lot of the breakdowns sort of don't fit. They are kind of misplaced in here. But I think it was risecore at the time. You gotta have some breakdowns in there. I don't think that is where Sleeping With Sirens does their best work. I think that the breakdowns are a little bit unnecessary. There are some on the record that I think are good, and there are some where I'm like, if that wasn't here, this song might be better, or at least it doesn't need to be here. So I think if there is a criticism about this, some of the breakdowns, some of the rise core stuff is not as necessary on their music like that. My top tracks from Let's Cheers to This, not picking the singles, of which there were 4. Well, I pick a couple. If You Can't Hang is obviously a staple in the scene. You can play that anywhere and people know it. It's a little bit newer than some of the like main big shit, but like you can play that and people know it and it's super fun to do. But my personal top tracks, Where Are You Now? I really like that song gets stuck in my head immediately. Like I'm just singing that chorus. And the yes part, it's like, yeah, it immediately gets stuck in my head. Fire is a place where I think the breakdowns and the more heavy sound does work for them. I think that Kellin having like more of a poppy voice on that does still work. Whereas some of the breakdowns, it doesn't have as good of a sound over it. But Fire definitely works for me. And All of My Heart, I know you're going to hate this. I know you're going to complain about this. Sleeping with Sirens does ballads super well. And I've listened to a few of their other albums with ballads on it. And I think that it is a place where Sleeping with Sirens definitely excels and where Kellin excels as a singer. Every ballad I've heard by Sleeping with Sirens has been absolutely nailed. So I remembered like listening to this again, like I'd kind of forgotten about this, just had misplaced this in my mind. And I come back and I'm like in my car, just like gripping the steering wheel. Like it starts to build up at the end and you're like belting All My Heart. Yeah, it's great. I'm a big fan of that song and we will fight about that in a moment.
I'm so happy for you.
Stay tuned to fight about that song. As soon as I heard, I'm like, Lizzie's going to bitch about this and I'm going to be so fucking in your mentions in real life. Brian was in my DMs, but we were in the room together.
No, Brian's going to roll up to my apartment and be like, let me in.
I'm right here. I'm chasing you home down the street. I'm like, you didn't like All My Heart. My least favorite tracks from Let's Cheers to This by Sleeping with Sirens. I had none that were really strongly negative. I didn't really have, I still really like this record quite a bit. And I'm finding myself like singing the lines in my head. There's certainly some small bits here and there, but I mostly can let them go. The only one where I'm like maybe a little bit more than other ones is Trophy Father's Trophy Son, because the lyrics are a little bit like childish, immature. I know that it's like very clearly a personal song, so I never want to like shade on something where you're writing about your personal experience and you're being maybe a little bit less metaphorical and maybe a little bit more specific and not trying to dull what you're trying to say with it. But for me, as somebody who's not living that personal experience, it's like, yeah, I don't really necessarily vibe with that as much. But even then, I'm like, no, this song rules. Like as soon as you get past like the opening parts of it and you're like, oh, what's this song about? You're like, nope, I'm in. Nope, I'm fully invested now. So yeah, I can't really speak ill of anything on this record. I'm still very much into it. And yeah, really still like it. And stay tuned for me beating the shit out of Lizzie on this one.
My thoughts on Let's Cheers to This from Sleeping with Sirens. Sleeping with Sirens completely missed me. So they came out when I was still in high school, and Pierce and Pierce Vale were very, very big. But what was funny is that in my group of friends in high school, we saw that as like, that's the boy band type of thing. So we were like, oh, you like those? Get away from us.
Are you saying like boy bands like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys? Or are you saying boy bands like only boys like this?
No, like they were like the NSYNC Backstreet Boys to me and my friend group. So we were all like, no, we only listen to like Hollywood Undead and Asking Alexandria.
Okay.
And My Chemical Romance.
Okay.
I had the weird time of music. Don't worry about it, all right?
Okay.
We were a hodgepodge of things. So it never got to me. But when I was out of high school and I was going into college, I was on Tumblr a lot because Tumblr girly core, of course. And I would see a lot on like the bandom pages that I was on a lot. And I would see Collide with the Sky and then Sleeping with Sirens. And I just bypass them because I'm like, I don't listen to these bands. They don't really catch me. Whatever. Where's my next My Chem or Fall Out Boy edit? That's what I want to retweet. So it just didn't do anything for me. I never really listened to it. Overall, this is the first time listening to this album like ever. So I've obviously heard If You Can't Hang. for the longest time, I had no idea who actually sang.
Interesting. Okay.
So that was where I was like, oh yeah, it's this band. Awesome. And then I never sought it out again.
Yep.
This overall was something, it just wasn't for me. I thought it would be for me because I like King for a Day.
Which doesn't sound like anything on this record. Yeah.
Yeah. I think overall it's not what I was expecting from them. But I think that the way that they structured a lot of stuff throughout like the album and they formatted it, there's certain parts where I personally don't like a particular section, but it makes sense with the way that it transitions from here's a harder song, here's a mid harder song, here's a softer pop rock song, here's acoustic, and then back again and ties it up. And I was like, that's really genius because that's also how I like to DJ is like to actually like formulate things through. Yeah. I think it's a lot cleaner and it just makes things more listenable. And while there was a lot that I personally didn't really like or grab onto as much, I thought that formulaically it was fantastic. That's a great thing that they did in the production and development of it. So my top 3 songs from Let's Cheers to This is the title track, which is the ending track. I really think that it wraps it up super well. I was very impressed that they're able to blend their original heavier sounds with more or their like middle tone and like pop rocky vibe. I thought it was done really, really well and I really enjoyed it is my biggest thing. A trophy father's trophy son.
In listening to this was like, this is a song that Lizzie is definitely going to like. I knew it.
I like stories and songs.
Yes.
I heard it. I said, oh, I do really like this. And I looked at the name. I'm like, I don't like the title of it, but we're going to look past that.
Right.
Because I am somebody who judge a book by its cover when it comes to songs and music. This is also a sound where if you were to say, listen to Sleeping With Sirens for the first time, like I'm an alien, you play Can't Hang, you play this song, you say, okay, I get it.
Yep.
Like this makes the most sense to me, which is why when we get into more of it, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me. 4 corners and 2 sides. The screams, like right before the chorus, give me quintessential like 2010s vibes.
Yes.
I didn't know how to really explain it, but it just, you hear it and you're like, this is the good part of high school.
Yep.
This is what I like. This is what I listen to. Like it hit right where it's supposed to. This is where if the Tumblr girlie sent me this, I'd say, you know what? Maybe I'll consider it. If the Tumblr girlie sent this to me in 2014, might have changed things, but we didn't. It's 10 years later. Sorry.
That's your canon event that you missed out on.
Yeah. Now my least saves from Let's Cheers to This by Sleeping With Sirens. These are all sequential order.
When we say pick one of your least favorite songs and you're like, I have 4. It's like, okay, you hated this.
Your Nickel Ain't Worth My Dime. It's way too poppy.
No, you're wrong.
It's too poppy for me.
No.
It feels out of place, but it transitions into the next song, Postcards and Polaroids, really well. It's more of a pop punk, like traditional pop punk track, which I felt like, okay, if you want to elevate that part, that you can do it, cool. And then All My Heart, I just don't really like slow songs.
How do I get you to like ballads?
Make them devastating.
No, you need to fall in love. That's what you need to do.
Wow.
Yeah, you need to fall in love.
I like My Immortal.
That's not a love song.
Exactly.
That's a song for teenage goths who write poetry and fanfic, and that's you.
Wow.
But it's like, oh, that's somebody who is writing about love, having never experienced it, and you're hearing somebody talk about love, and it's like, I don't understand this, and it's like, well,
wow.
Eligible bachelors, if you're watching this, please get in the comments. Help Lizzie like ballads. No one has ever had all of her heart. Can she have all of yours? That's what we thought about this record, but there were other people who also had thoughts about this record. So I went to Amazon.com. Lizzie went to some media, some critics, some people who have written about this record for their publication.
There's a lot of word salad involved.
So I'm going to read off some Amazon reviews from people who felt some way about this record. This is a review from Dennis Schaefer. This is a 5-star review from 2017, so a few years after this record came out. The review is called, "Give it a good long listen and everything will make sense. Let's Cheers to This is my favorite Sleeping With Sirens album to date. It has the perfect combo of post-hardcore roots with an almost emo lyrical content." It is that, not almost. A Trophy Father's Trophy Son is a song that really hit close to home for me. All-time favorite song off this album. The title track, Holy Mother of Kellin, it was powerful. A positive outlook on the life ahead of this band. They're really not going to let anything get in their way of the world becoming theirs, in a metaphorical sense. I don't think that was confusing as to whether or not they were going to own the world as a metaphor.
No, I think I'm worried about Dennis. I hope he's doing all right.
Dennis loved this record. I agree with Dennis. I am not as harsh as I'm not Dennis. The last review I have here, 5 stars from Diz. This was written in 2013. Average Dude's Review. This album is off the chain. I'm actually getting sick of it because I played it over and over and over. It's really good, upbeat, and my go-to album for jogging. I'd hit it.
I'd hit it?
I don't know.
All right.
No one has rated that helpful. I'm going to hit the helpful.
There you go.
I've rated that review
This
helpful.
was helpful for everybody here.
I'd hit it.
So now I have some critic reviews for Let's Cheers to This. The first one comes from Absolute Punk, reviewed by Ryan Gardner, May 2011, and it is at 77% out of 100%.
I don't know why we need percentages.
I don't know why we had to go straight to 100. Just like 4 or 5 stars is more than all right, guys. We're getting silly. Again, we're not grading papers here. No. You don't gotta worry about it. Sleeping with Sirens have made immense progress leading up to their sophomore record. Let's cheers to this. The main progression in Quinn's controlled vocal style, as the high notes aren't quite as high, thankfully, and the low screams are more structured than ever, another added bonus. The result of this growth is a record of progression. Yet again, you either love their sound or hate it. There is hardly an in-between here. That said, Let's Cheers to This will surely garner more fans than it will lose, as it's more appealing than the previous effort. Evident from the addicting Do It Now, Remember It Later, Sleeping with Sirens have really expanded their boundaries this time around, separating them from a lot of other Rise artists of similar styles. As the record comes to a close, it's fully evident that 2011 will be a truly breakout year for Sleeping with Sirens, as it's nearly impossible not to notice their progression in just over a year.
100%. Band is got a very good-looking lead singer who can sing really good, sing those high pitches, sings pop music. They blew up.
I know.
All you needed was that.
Kellin Quinn's on an absurd amount of collabs.
Yeah.
Where's the Spotify collab list of Kellin Quinn features?
Gotta make it.
Up to us.
Yeah.
We have another review from Sputnik Music by BBD Mittens with a Z.
BB the Mittens.
From September 2011.
BB the Mittens.
Who gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. You all right, old man?
BB the Mitts. I like that. That tickled me.
That tickled you?
That was awesome. BB the Mitts.
TLDR, Sleeping with Sirens drops the risecore and goes back to basics to give you an album well worth the listen. Now for the actual review. To be honest, I wrote this album off, in parentheses, as many probably have, end parentheses, and did not give it another serious listen until about a month after its release. I am a picky person when it comes to post-hardcore, and Sleeping with Sirens gets it done on this album with a different kind of flair than previously heard on With Ears. They didn't put the whole thing, don't worry.
Thank you.
Do not worry. Armed with the ex-lead guitarist of Broadway and a new drummer, Let's Cheers to This is a great breath of fresh air and a scene where electrocore bands get all the preference.
True.
Let's Cheers to This might not be groundbreaking, but it covers almost every area I can think of that constitutes a solid post-hardcore album. Although having an obvious poppy slant, this album builds off of the best parts of With Ears to create a hell of a sophomore album. If you are listening, hoping for metal, then you will be disappointed. Sleeping with Sirens is not a heavy band, despite their slight outbursts. Simply put, Let's Cheers to This is heavier where it needs to be and mellow when it is better fitting. As a Rise Records album, this is quite a surprise. If you never gave this band or this album a solid listen, allow yourself to be a little surprised. I was a little surprised.
It's true. Rise Records was known for electrocore and not this kind of sound. And I think maybe that's why at the time it was very refreshing to me to hear something that was just more poppy and fun versus another Asking Alexandria clone. That was our takes. That's what the experts thought on the internet. And that's what the not so experts thought on the internet. And we, as not so experts on the internet, have just one more question to answer. Would we recommend seeing Let's Cheers to This by Sleeping with Sirens at When We Were Young Fest? I'm going to say yes, wholeheartedly, because I really like this record. Sleeping with Sirens is still a very good live band. The band has just gotten better over time, and I still think they're putting on a phenomenal live show even today. They've obviously played a lot of these fests already, so they've been out here. They've been doing the thing. Kellin still sounds good. And so I would definitely recommend seeing this record. For me, it's a definite yes. This is one of the ones that I'm actually excited to see at the fest when we're there this year.
I think it was good for me to finally listen to this band in general because I never have. I've only listened to the singles like ever because it's just, again, was a band that never fell on my radar. But it's not a band I would be sprinting off into the sunset on the Las Vegas fairgrounds to catch, per se. I think if they came through for like a tour, I could say, yeah, I'll catch them, but it's not necessarily my priority. And it's not a bad thing. It just didn't hit for me in the same way it hit for Brian.
Well, those are our thoughts. That's where we're going to be at When We Were Young Fest. Do you agree? Were we right? Were we wrong? Are you cheersing us to this? Let us know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe. We have all the records down in the description and a playlist. So if you have thoughts on any of the records we've done so far, or maybe one's coming up, make sure to let us know. Make sure to let us know what you're excited for. Until the next episode, Sleeping with Sirens, When We Were Young Fest 2024. We will see you there.